Welcome, everyone, to today's explainer. If you're the kind of person who just loves peeling back the layers of history, language, and meaning, well, you are absolutely in the right place. Today, we're dissecting an incredible linguistic analysis of Surah 19, also known as Maryam. We're going to look at how this analysis argues that this ancient text, when it's read purely on its own linguistic terms, profoundly challenges centuries of accumulated assumptions. It is a real game changer. Okay, let's dive right into this. It all starts with a pretty fundamental question. Is religion about following ancient rituals, or is it about maintaining a conscious connection to reality? The source material we're looking at today makes a really profound distinction. It contrasts institutionalized religion, the kind that often relies on man-made rituals and sectarian divisions, with what the text calls Deen. And Deen is presented as a direct, holistic way of life. It's about personal accountability based on universal principles, not just going through the motions. So, here is our roadmap for today's explainer. First, signs beyond human limits. 2, redefining revelation and restraint. 3, the true message of Isa. 4, consciousness versus empty rituals. And finally, dismantling human religious hierarchies. Basically, we're going to see how the source material deconstructs inherited dogma to reconstruct the original Arabic text's reality. Starting off with Section 1, Signs Beyond Human Limits, Breaking the Assumed Natural Order. And this brilliantly illustrates the two primary postures contrasted throughout the source material. On one hand, we have those who surrender. These are folks like Zakariya, Maryam, and Ibrahim. They recognize their human limits and accept divine instruction with total peace and wholeness, a state the text refers to as salam. But then on the flip side, we see those who make claims. This is that classic human tendency to assign partners to the divine, or to build these massive theological systems based purely on inherited traditions. It's the assumption that just because a belief was passed down, it must automatically be true. So, to really figure out what these signs meant originally, the source material uses a linguistic detective tool called tasrif. Think of it like a giant puzzle. Instead of relying on outside historical commentaries, tasrif allows the text to interpret its own vocabulary by cross-referencing how specific words are used across different verses. It's an incredibly rigorous way to just strip away centuries of cultural baggage and get right down to the raw, functional Arabic meaning. Moving on to Section 2, Redefining Revelation and Restraint, Discovering Functional Definitions. Let's move to and see how this builds our understanding of some really key terms. Take the word Nabi, for example. Inherited tradition usually frames this as some mystical inherited title, right? But structurally, looking at the root word, which means news or information, a Nabi is defined purely as someone who receives inspired insight into the unseen. It's a functional description of an experience, not a royal office. Similarly, the term Rasul comes from a root meaning to send. When the text pairs these two terms together for figures like Musa, it highlights a really clear functional overlap. You see, the Nabi receives the insight, and the Rasul is the active agent sent out to deliver that message clearly to the people. Again, it's all about the action, receiving and delivering. It's a direct communication meant to bring clarity rather than a theological title. Which brings us to Maryam. According to the linguistic data, when she received this unbelievably intense revelation, she withdrew behind a screen. Her method for handling this profound divine reality? It was a vow of nonverbal restraint to process exactly what was happening. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how the source material redefines a word we are all very familiar with, sawm. Traditionally, sawm is almost universally interpreted as a calendar-bound physical fast, abstaining from food and water. But the source material notes that Maryam actually says, "I have vowed to the most merciful Assam, so I will not speak today to any human." Using that tasrif method we talked about, sawm is revealed here not as a diet, but as conscious self-control, restraint, and specifically abstaining from speech to process intense spiritual insight. All right, Section 3, the true message of Isa. A correction from the cradle. The text bypasses centuries of theological debate by putting his actual message directly into his own mouth, right from the cradle. His very first words are presented like this: "Indeed, I am a servant of Allah. He gave me the book and made me a prophet." Notice the extreme precision there. He declares himself an abd, a servant. The text firmly establishes this opening statement to correct theological distortions before they even have a chance to solidify. The linguistic analysis points out that Isa is consistently described in purely functional terms. He's a sign, a servant, and a messenger. The miraculous nature of his birth isn't presented as evidence of an incarnation. Instead, it's assignment to prove that divine creative power absolutely transcends human biological limitations. The text actively pushes back against what later theology turned him into. It positions him as a profound sign pointing toward the source, completely denying the idea that he is an object of worship himself. That brings us to Section 4, Consciousness versus Empty Rituals, the danger of wasting the connection. To really grasp this conflict, we need to look at another redefined word, salat. While it's widely assumed to mean only a mechanical sequence of physical rituals, the linguistic analysis roots it in maintaining a close, internal, and conscious connection to universal principles. It is the act of turning your attention fully toward guidance. So the crucial point is how the text describes successive generations who, as it says, wasted the salat. According to the analysis, wasting the salat doesn't just mean skipping your physical prayers. In fact, traditional religious systems are often completely obsessed with outer performance. Wasting it means losing that deep, internal, ethical connection to universal principles. And the result? You're left with an empty shell of religious performance, while in reality, you're just following your own base desires. It's a really stark warning. And that leads us to our final section, Section 5, Dismantling Human Religious Hierarchies, the Ultimate Leveling of Authority. I want to read this next quote directly from the text, and I just want you to notice the absolute visceral intensity of the language here. You have brought something monstrous. The heavens are almost torn apart from it, and the earth split open, and the mountains collapse in devastation. The text is reacting to the claim that the most merciful has taken a son. It doesn't just treat this as a simple misunderstanding. It treats it as a distortion so incredibly severe that reality itself recoils from it. So, why such an intense reaction? Well, according to the source material, the analytical reasoning behind this is profound. Claiming divine offspring or requiring human intermediaries to bridge the gap to the divine completely destroys the foundational principle of direct human accountability. Because the moment intermediaries are introduced, it allows human institutions, priests, scholars, whatever the structure may be, to control access to the divine. To counter this, the text establishes absolute equality. It states that every single entity in the heavens and earth comes to the source directly as a servant, an abd. This completely levels all human hierarchies. Under this framework, there's no institution, no individual who holds mediated authority over another person's consciousness. Every single person is directly accountable. When we pull all of this together, we see a massive paradigm shift from the inherited assumptions. Traditionally, you have things like sawm being just physical fasting, salat as merely mechanical rituals, and divine authority requiring some kind of holy lineage. But on the flip side, we look at the reality presented by the linguistic analysis of Surah 19. Sawm is a universal practice of conscious restraint and silence. Salat is a deep, internal, conscious connection to guidance. And divine authority? Every single individual stands in direct, unmediated accountability. It's a profound shift from a rule-bound, hierarchical system to a direct, liberated engagement with reality. I want to leave you with a provocative question drawn directly from our source material today. Does aligning sawm as a practice of conscious restraint and salat as a living, internal connection change how you view your own daily awareness? If we strip away the inherited assumptions and actually look at the functional reality of these concepts, how does that shift your understanding of personal accountability? It's a pretty powerful thought to carry with you. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning, keep learning, and as always, keep looking closely at the text.